Well, hey there.
Hey.
Welcome to The Scoop. We are back, and we're about to dive deep.
Yeah, this is a big one. This is one that we've been talking about wanting to do for a long time. So
we want to spend some time talking about cell phones, internet usage, and social media and pornography. So this is going to take more than 1 week. We know that, and so we'll kind of work through different aspects. But
this is just part one of 2 or 3 or however many it takes.
Yeah, so if we decide we need to even break one up for 2 weeks because it's 20 minutes long, then we'll do it, but we'll see. But here's kind of the assumption that I want to start from, is that I think too many families think that their home is safe, that their kids don't have any difficulties or any temptation when it comes to internet. They believe their families are smart online and don't think that they have problems with social media or pornography. And so my too many is defined by if there's one family who thinks that they're safe, there's too many.
Yeah, it's just completely pervasive. It's affecting pretty much everybody, and it's not just the bad kids or the troubled kids, it's great kids who are struggling with this stuff, and so it's something that we all need to be thinking about.
Yeah, like if it were a scale of, would you think that 50% or 100% struggle with social media, internet usage, pornography, I would say that the number is probably closer to 100% than 50% of people. And so it is rampant. And
I think a lot of times we think that, you know, the people who struggle with this stuff are the exception, but I think in reality, the people who don't struggle with it are the exception.
Yeah. And so a couple things that we know. We know and believe that technology is a good thing. Like we're filming a video that's watched on the internet that's for parents to how do we protect ourselves? Like there's technology adds so much good and convenience and makes things easier. But with any good thing, that can become addictive. It can be used for evil. It can distract just as much as it can be good. And so
yeah, it's hard because you don't want to become like Amish and completely pull yourself out of society, because technology is such an important part of society now. It's how we do school, it's how we do work, it's how we have fun, and so it's everywhere.
A couple things blew me away kind of doing some research. We actually have notes this time, and so like going through these things, but that the average age that a kid gets their first smartphone is 10.3 years old. And that blew me away.
Yeah, that's kind of crazy. I got my first cell phone when I was 16, but there weren't smartphones until I was in college, so I didn't really have to worry about that.
I got my first cell phone when I graduated from college, and I could pay for it myself. And I had my flip phone. And
now, if you were a 10.3-year-old, you could have a smartphone.
Yeah, that's wild. So more than 50% of kids have phones by the time they hit middle school.
Yeah, that just blows my mind, you know, and it's not just for texting and calling, because most kids, statistics show that by 12 years old is when they're getting their first social media account, which is kind of crazy because almost every social media account that I know of has a rule that you can't be on there if you're under 13, but the average age that kids are getting social media is at 12 years old.
Yeah, and the reason that they say 13 is because they recognize the addictive nature of social media. They recognize what it does to people and that they might not be ready for it. Like I've actually heard the age thrown out there that people should start using social media is probably closer to 18. And so I was in my reading, saw that Bill Gates said that he didn't allow any of his kids to get a phone until they were in high school. So when they were 14 and going into high school, that was when they could first get a phone, but it was just like, you don't need it.
What does he know about technology?
Well, he knows very little, but he had standards for his family and said, this is who we are and this is what we're doing. And that's a good thing to say. That's an okay reasoning to say, this is who we are. And just because everybody else does, you don't have to.
Yeah. So. And we're actually seeing more and more of our own students making the decision for themselves to pull themselves off of social media just because they're realizing how much of a struggle it can be.
Yeah. Phones, it's not even social media though, but phones can just be addictive. So there's a couple sites that we would throw out there. Common Sense Media was one that I was looking at, and they pointed out that the average tween, so that's 10 to 12 years old, so once they've hit double digits, before they become an official teenager. The average tween has more than 30 hours of screen time a week. And so that's basically 4 hours and 45 minutes each day. And that's not counting any homework or schoolwork. So any screen time that they have at school or doing homework at home does not count. So this is TV, phone, video games, everything. And then it goes up to, when they become teenagers, it goes up and breaks more than 50 hours a week and comes in at 7 hours and 22 minutes a day of screen time, which is basically
a third of your day almost.
It's a third of your day, and it's more than 2 whole days of the week.
Yeah.
It's basically 3 days of your awake time a week that you spend on your phone.
It's not just something that our kids or our teens are struggling with, but it's something that our entire society struggles with. And it's, I think that it's going to become a conversation that we hear more and more. Like, what is this doing to us as a society, as people?
Yeah, and more is coming out as far as research and the dangers. And so we are recognizing that this is an issue. We are recognizing that this is something we need to look at. And so if your kid has a phone, or if you're thinking about getting your kid a phone, it's an important thing to talk to them about. How much time do you think is too much time to be on your phone? That's a good conversation.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting question to ask. Just like without any sort of like giving them an idea, just like, what do you think is too much? How much is too much?
Yeah.
And then, you know, that could lead to a really interesting conversation.
And then are you willing to follow the same rules?
Yeah. Yeah.
But cell phones specifically have brought a whole new awareness of using technology for evil. Like for me, when I was a kid, our computer was in the kitchen. But I know for me, like my first introduction to pornography on a computer was in a public space, which was terrifying. As I was like, what is this ad? And all of a sudden you're like, this is weird. And then like 40 of them popped up. Like it was just like, and I'm like, just like trying to X out of everything. Like, I don't think I intentionally went there, but I was in a public space and mortified. I'm like, why would this be on the internet?
The Wild West of the early 2000s with pop-ups everywhere, man.
Yeah, and so I had no idea how I got there, and I was trying to avoid it, and I didn't want to go back, and yet at the same time, I was curious.
It's so easy now. It's just everywhere. Yeah. So it's not like one of those things where we can just throw on a filter and hope for the best, and we don't have to talk about it. It's important to have these conversations because sooner or later, probably sooner, your kids are going to see this stuff and they're going to need to know how to respond to it.
Yeah. How soon do you think it is?
How soon do I think it is? A while ago. A
while ago. It's already happened. So if you're a parent of a student in student ministries, chances are it's already happened. Fight the New Drug has a lot of research, and they estimate, because they can't fully find this one out, but they estimate that the first encounter with pornography is between the ages of 9 and 11 years old. And that's terrifying. So, like, it's happened.
Yeah, I mean, that stat is true for me, and I didn't grow up in the era of smartphones. My first time encountering pornography was as a 4th or 5th grader at a friend's house at an overnight thing. Somebody pulled it up, and there it was. And yeah. I'm sure that our kids, it's still happening today, and that's what the stats seem to be saying. Nearly
60% of tweens encountered nudity or sexual content on the internet in 2018. So 60% of 10 to 12-year-olds saw pornography, whether intentionally or not.
And that's the 60% who are talking about it, not the,
who are willing to say it.
Yeah.
But the truth is that porn, social media, and drugs actually have a lot in common in the way that they deal with the brain. And so they have a lot of effects on how our mind processes things and the chemicals that our brains release. And by no means are we experts.
No, yeah, we're not chemists or child psychologists or anything like that. But
I don't even claim to be that smart.
No. The amazing
but we can read.
Yeah, and that's one of the great things about technology. Technology is not all bad because it also opens up a window to a huge, library of knowledge that we can access and inform ourselves.
Yeah. When you experience something that you enjoy, the brain releases a chemical called dopamine. It's a chemical that makes you feel good. It's the rush that you get. And so it happens when we get likes on a post, when we get new friend requests, when we see pornography and are aroused, or when we take crack cocaine. And you're just like, oh, and so they're talking about how social media and pornography are very similar to taking hardcore drugs. And you're just like, oh, okay, this just got real.
And if you're thinking like, that can't be true, and then think about how many times you've opened up a browser without thinking about it and clicked over to Facebook, just like, why am I here? I was trying to do something else on the internet and I'm on Facebook again. And it's because our brains are wired. It's like, man, I might have some notifications. I might have some comments.
Anytime you post a picture on Instagram, and how often do you check back to see how many likes you have?
Yeah.
I saw an article a couple weeks ago that they're talking, Instagram is planning on removing the number of likes on your friends' posts. So that you only see how many likes that you get, but you can't compare yourself to others.
And not based on any sort of financial gain for themselves, but because of studies that have come out that have shown how damaging it is for people. They're completely addicted to seeing those numbers and comparing themselves to others.
Yeah. We keep needing more, and the hard part is similar to drugs. You need more and more in order to get the same high, to get the same rush. Another chemical that the brain releases is one called oxytocin, and this is a connection chemical that is a bonding thing. And so as it's released, it's remembering, this is the feeling that I got, and this is the experience that I was going through when I got that positive feeling. So it's taking the dopamine rush and saying, what do I have to do in order to get that again? And so, like many drugs, with social media, we need more likes, we need more friends, we need more and more and more. I got 100 likes, I want 150, and we keep going back. And we post more and we post more. With pornography, it becomes, I either need more time with it or I need harder stuff, more graphic nature of things. And you're just like, this is ruining our brains. And so it's taking the connection that's meant to have with people, and we're finding our connections on a screen rather than with people, and we're missing out on so much.
So today, if you are coming to the end of this video and you're saying like, wow, this is super depressing, like, what do we do about it? We are going to have some suggestions of things that you can do about it. We hope that just getting this information in front of you, hoping that you realize that this is something that we need to be thinking about, it's something that we need to be talking about, it's something that you need to be talking about with your students. But, there are some things that you can do, and we're going to be talking about those next time.
Yeah, all these things lead to just anxiety and depression in students. Like, it's having its effects. And so our question for you is, are you willing to talk about it?
Yeah.
Like, will you take the step, and what are you going to do to, I guess, stealing from the website, fight the new drug, which could be either pornography or social media, but the addictions that control us, like, what are we doing to fight it?
Yeah. And light casts out darkness. And when you have conversations about these things, it's casting light on the situation. Absolutely. And we've had this, we've talked about this over and over again in these videos. You can go back to our video about hard conversations, and yes, it's going to be awkward. Yes, it's going to be weird. Yes, your student might not want to talk to you about it the first time, but it's worth pursuing and it's worth trying.
Embrace the awkward.
Yeah, embrace the awkward.
So thanks for watching. Hopefully you made it all the way through, and we'll be back with more info.
Yep. See you next time.